YouTube, with NBA expansion being such a hot topic issue over the past couple years, and Adam Silver recently going over, kind of an extensive plan or maybe some ideas that he threw around during the 2024 finals press conference about NBA expansion over the next few years. I think it's safe to say that this is absolutely something that's going to be happening soon. I don't know if it's going to be this year or within the next few years, but there will be 32 teams, I would say, within the next 5 years or so in the NBA. In this video, I want to talk about, what I think of this idea, what teams I think would make sense for the NBA to do an expansion to, how it would work, and also I'm going to add some of my, fun cities I think could be a really good idea for the NBA to consider. Let's talk expansion, folks. 32 teams. This is exciting. First of all, before I get into it, make sure you guys let me know down in the comment section if you are from a city that isn't currently represented by an NBA team. What city do you think you would want to see the NBA expand to? It would probably have to be an Eastern Conference team and a Western Conference team. I'm going to give some of mine, but I'm just curious for the comment section because I've always lived near Philadelphia my whole life, and I've never had to deal with not having an NBA team and having to consider options of like what's closest to me or what team I like. So it's always just been the Sixers for me, right? But I can imagine as someone living outside of a major city or a city that isn't represented by the NBA, you could definitely want your city to be on the map. And let me know down in the comment section what some of those might be. But first thing I want to talk about is the idea of the expansion, right? Like, what does this mean for the league? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's it going to look like, right? So as I just mentioned previously, it would most likely have to be an Eastern Conference team and a Western Conference team. I think that's pretty fair to say. 32 teams, it would have to be one for each conference. So ideally you would have, for travel reasons, one team on the East Coast or close to the East Coast, and then one team out west. Like I said, there are plenty of cities to choose from. I don't think that's an issue. I'm sure these cities are also really wanting to have an NBA team, as it is good for the economy in the cities and could bring a lot of attention to the city and stuff like that. So obviously I think all these cities are going to want to do everything they can to make sure their city is considered. But I've never personally been conscious enough or old enough to witness an expansion. I think in the late 90s they were doing it, and I want to say the Grizzlies were the last team to be an expansion. I could be wrong about that though. Let me know down in the comments if you know more than I do about that, which I'm sure a lot of you guys do. From what I understand, back in the day, for the expansions, they would have a 8-player protection rule so that the new team would come in and they would get a high draft pick, but also they would have to fill out their roster, right? Like, and they couldn't just go out and get all the free agents. So the teams would basically protect 8 players on their roster out of all the 12 players, and those 4 players that were unprotected out of the 12, they would do an expansion draft. So let's say it's like Vegas and I don't know, Nashville, right? So Vegas would get let's say the first pick in the expansion draft, and then out of all 30 teams, and then like I said, the 8-player protection rule, 4 players on each roster would be available that the team decides it's okay to let go of and that are not in the 8-player protection that they choose. So then they'll the 2 teams will just go back and forth, I think, for like 12 rounds or so, picking their players, and then they'll get a high pick in the draft automatically. So kind of would not be good if you're a tanking team and then a team swoops in out of thin air and just takes one of your high picks. So that could be interesting, right? Like, I could see how that could be a fun idea, and also just having more teams in the NBA I think is exciting, right? It's an exciting possibility. I mean, I remember in the NHL a little while ago, I can't remember at this point how long it was, but the Vegas Golden Knights were a new expansion team and they ended up winning the Stanley Cup within the first few years of their existence. So that's it's definitely something that I think could bring a lot of excitement towards the NBA community and the NBA fans. I know I'm excited. I just hope they pick the right cities, you know what I mean? And I hope for like the travel sake, they're talking about some cities that we'll get into in a little bit that are so far away and so many issues come with it. So let's talk about what cities Adam Silver mentioned, what places he's thinking of and the league's thinking of, and also, what cities could make sense in this regard, right? So Adam Silver first mentioned Canada as a place that he, considers to be a really hot button topic of discussion around expansion. And obviously there's so many cities in Canada that are represented in a lot of the major sports, primarily the NHL, as it is a fairly big Canadian game. I think it's pretty obvious to say, but we have the Toronto Raptors, and that kind of just represents all of Canada right now. And I'm pretty sure Raptors fans are okay with that because the Raptors fan base is absolutely incredible. But one of the cities was Montreal that was mentioned, and I think more Canadian teams as the NBA has evolved, and there's so many great Canadian players in our league right now. You think of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you think of RJ Barrett, some of these guys coming from Canada, Andrew Wiggins, right? Like, there's been a lot of progress in the Canadian basketball scene throughout my lifetime, right? And I think Canada could be a really, really good place to get more cities involved in the NBA and just get more kids into basketball in Canada as a whole, right? I think that would definitely help that process along. The NBA is definitely a global game now, and the more countries that can, take part in this beautiful game is obviously better. So, Canada could be a really good option. I think Montreal makes sense. Vancouver is another one. I mean, the, Grizzlies started as the Vancouver Grizzlies, and and then, move down to Memphis. But, that is definitely on the table as a team. Some people were saying San Jose as a sleeper city that could be involved, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because, California has like 5 teams already. So I don't know if we really want for the NBA to do that. If I was making the decision, which I'm not, but if I was, I would root for a smaller, not a smaller city, but like a city that isn't represented any team close to them. Like they talk about Raleigh, North Carolina, or Louisville, Kentucky. I think could be fun. Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky is a great place for basketball. I mean, you think about college, right? You have Louisville, you have, the Kentucky Wildcats who have produced so many great players in the NBA over the past few years. If you're a Kentucky guard, there's a good chance you're going to the NBA, high in the draft, and you're going to be a great player. So you always got to look out for the Kentucky Wildcats. But I think, Louisville, Kentucky could be a really, really cool place for an NBA team. I think Kentucky should be represented by now in the NBA. But like I said, I would want it to be a team that doesn't have, a team in their state like Kentucky. Like I said, could be a lot of fun, right? And obvious choices for expansion, anytime you're going to bring it up, are going to be, bigger markets that bring in a good economy, because this is a business transaction at the end of the day, which can take the fun out of it a little bit and, fun out of the decision making and excitement. But that is their bottom line, right? Like the NBA is trying to make more money, and that's part of the reason they're expanding, right? Like it's good for the game for sure that, I think you don't want to have 40 teams. I think that's a lot of teams, right? It's way too many, but 32 is a good number. The NFL has 32 teams. So I think it just makes sense after a while of like, this is bringing in X amount of dollars per year, the NBA. And we have cities that could be ready for an NBA team and could really, really fill a lot of seats and bring a lot of excitement and enjoyment to the league and in those, states and places. But before it was like, we're just trying to build up the teams we have. And, I think, like I said, the 32 is a good number. I don't think you want to go over that. I think that would be kind of an issue, but 32 is a good number. But obviously, like I said, Vegas is always going to be on the table in terms of expansion because, like I said, Vegas is a smaller city population wise, I believe, but it does have a great economy, one of the best economies out of any city, especially, compared to its size of, people. So you have the Vegas Aces in the WNBA, who are a big team. You have the Golden Knights in hockey and now the Vegas Raiders. So the Vegas is an emerging market in the world of sports as far as, housing teams, because, obviously the betting and lifestyle of Vegas is going to attract a lot of people and, sports fans for that reason, right? So the NBA could make a lot of money from going to Vegas, but as far as I understand, it isn't, the biggest population. So that might play a factor in, how many Vegas votes, whatever. I don't know how it works, but how many people vote for Vegas, if that's how it works, for the expansion team. Another city that I think definitely deserves a team, which has been discussed for years now, ever since they relocated to Oklahoma City, that is the Seattle Supersonics coming back to the NBA. I think that is the team in the Western Conference that has to be created once again. It's a real shame what happened to Seattle. I would imagine if you're a Seattle native or a Washington State native, you would probably really root for the Oklahoma City Thunder still, because technically it is the Supersonics franchise. But it is a real shame what happened in Seattle, because they had some good fans and a lot of people were dedicated to the Supersonics, who actually had a lot of success in the 90s. If you guys remember, they went all the way to the finals in the 90s. Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, like there was a lot going on there. And then Ray Allen eventually, like, if you guys even remember, in 2008, Kevin Durant's rookie year was spent in Seattle. So, the Seattle Supersonics and just the Seattle city as a whole definitely deserves another shot at NBA fandom, because, it's a real shame if you're a Seattle fan what happened to you guys. I really feel bad. And I think, Seattle is definitely ready to get an NBA team again, and arguably wasn't ready to lose it in the first place. So Seattle's always going to be up there as an option. I think that has to be the Western Conference team, because I would imagine so many people in Seattle are just ready to have a team back, right? So, let me know down in the comment section if you're from there or from the area or whatever. Let me know, because I think that should be the Western Conference team. Now, as far as the East, you don't see a lot of cities being discussed that would be on the Eastern Conference, right? Like I saw San Jose. You see a lot of different cities. Like I heard Mexico City was, an option, but problem with that is it's so far away. I believe it's like 1,000 miles, they said, from the closest NBA team, which would be San Antonio. So that's a really tough place to travel to every night, or every other night or so. I can imagine a world where you're like from one of the top teams as far as geographically in the country, north as it gets, like Toronto, Boston, or Portland, or some of these teams all the way up north, and then you got to go all the way to Mexico City. That's probably a really long flight and a really big travel issue and logistics issue. But also, I heard the altitude there is even like way higher than sea level than Denver, so that could be another issue, right? Players have a hard enough time adjusting to the Denver altitude, and then you're gonna make them travel all the way down 1,000+ miles or whatever it is, and then the high altitude as well. They're gonna be so tired when they get back. So that's an interesting thought, and I think Mexico is obviously a place that is really emerging as a basketball market, and every country I think should be represented, but unfortunately it's just like logistics don't really account for that. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But as far as some Eastern Conference teams, because like I said, back on track, you don't see a lot of Eastern Conference teams being brought up. Like you see Kentucky, which would be an Eastern Conference team. I think Kentucky as a city or place for a team could be really, really good. It doesn't have to be Louisville. It could be located in Louisville, but you know how you have like some teams that are just like represented by their state, right? So like in football, you have the Carolina Panthers, right? And that's like all of Carolina. I think like the Kentucky something could be a really, really good idea for the brand, but also just for that state as a whole, right? So, you know, either way, I think Kentucky could be a really, really good place for the Eastern Conference team. Another city I thought could be interesting, me as a PA native and someone who's located around Philadelphia my whole life, you know, I hear a lot about Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has a team in the NHL, the MLB, and the NFL, and they're a really, really great sports city, but, you know, they don't have a team in the NBA and never have, I don't think. So, you know, Pittsburgh could be a really, really good idea because maybe that city is just itching for basketball, right? Like, could be, you know, their closest team is probably like an Ohio team, and I know they're a smaller city, so that might make the NBA shy to go to Pittsburgh for the expansion, but I don't know. I just think Pittsburgh, you know, could be a fun idea. As a Sixers fan, I would hate to see another team in New York. You know, like I said, I don't want the big states to get any more teams. You know, they have enough teams, right? That's just my mindset as a Sixers fan, but, you know, probably a lot of you guys disagree, but California and New York, I don't want to see another team in there. They got enough teams over there. But yeah, I think Kentucky or Pittsburgh could be a good idea for the Eastern Conference team. Nashville was another one discussed, which would probably end up being an Eastern Conference team somehow. I don't know. They have to figure out more teams for the East because there's just not enough right now. Teams being discussed. Most of the teams being discussed are Western, you know, geographically. So, you know, we'll have to see if they do kind of an NFL type thing where they make one of the Eastern Conference teams play in the West, but they're technically under the Eastern Conference, like you see with the Dallas Cowboys are somehow NFC East. You know, it just doesn't really make sense. So we'll have to see what happens with that, but hopefully somewhere along the East Coast or just the Eastern range in general, you know, if you split the map in half, somewhere in, you know, the East. So I think Kentucky would probably be my favorite thing to see as an Eastern Conference fan. But like I said, definitely let me know down in the comment section. I think this is a really fun idea, and I love talking about, you know, new cities. Seattle and Kentucky are my favorites. I want to see those two teams brought into the league. Seattle because, like I said, what happened to you guys, you know, moving to OKC, obviously, you know, the Thunder are iconic and they've had great success and they have a great fan base and they deserve a team as well. But, you know, Seattle, I can't even imagine if someone ripped my Sixers away and sent them somewhere else. Like, I would be devastated. I would never watch the NBA. I would be so mad, right? So I can't even imagine that. That's got to be a really, really tough thing. So Seattle, and then Kentucky, like I said, this is a place where a lot of basketball talent comes out of, and a lot of basketball, great basketball goes on every day. You know, a lot of basketball being played in Kentucky. It's just a great state for it. So, you know, somewhere in Kentucky, I think could be a really, really good thing for just the game of basketball as a whole, right? And so those are my two favorites, but obviously you're gonna have like Vegas and big markets and cities like that, like Montreal. You know, some Canada teams could be really cool also to represent, you know, Canada, the country right above the USA, right? But we'll see what happens, man. Make sure you guys let me know down in the comment section. Like I said, what do you think will happen with the expansion? You know, how do you think it's gonna work? I'm sure a lot of you guys know a lot more about this than me. I don't know a ton about it, I'll be honest. You know, I haven't read a ton about it. I wasn't alive during the expansion in like the 90s and the big expansions, but let me know down in the comment section if you have a lot more info than me. I would love to hear, you know, different inputs. And if you're from a city and you're an NBA fan that doesn't have an NBA team, let me know what that feels like, man. And let me know how hungry you are for an NBA team and how excited this expansion is for your city to have a shot at a team, really. I think that would be so exciting, man. So definitely let me know which team you want to see represented in the expansion, with 2 new teams coming probably within the next 5 years or so to the NBA. It's an exciting time, man. It really, really is. Well, you know, everybody watching this video right now, we'll get to say that we saw, you know, 2 new teams be put into the NBA. You know, I don't know what that feels like, so it'll be fun to see. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, man. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the finals as much as I am. This is a great time of year for basketball, even though it's ending soon. The off season coming up, the Summer Olympics. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading videos just like this every single day on topics related to current NBA, historic NBA, everything, right? We cover everything on this channel every day. And I want you guys to be a part of it, man, because I just love basketball and I know you guys do too. So I want to, you know, share experiences and my passion with, you know, like-minded people, right? So make sure you guys stick around, man. I will talk to you guys in the next video. This is your boy D-Have, and as always, peace.